DIA's Office of Security. Our objective with this video is to encourage DIA employees to report security concerns to the Office of Security and Counterintelligence. The present level of reporting is low, and we believe the low level of reporting can be attributed, in part, to the fact that employees are inhibited from voicing concerns. This briefing addresses natural inhibitions to report through an interview with the co-worker who provided the initial tip against Jonathan J. Pollard.
Navy intelligence analyst Jonathan Pollard pleaded guilty this week to espionage charges, but the case is far from closed. He sold U.S. secrets to a group of Israelis. That is raising questions about U.S. relations with a close ally, while on another front, intelligence officials are pondering how to prosecute the growing number of spy cases without giving too many secrets away.
Members of Congress scolded Israel for damaging relations with the U.S.
It was indeed a serious effort by the Israeli government to penetrate our intelligence community, and it was successful, and I don't like it.
Jonathan Pollard pleaded guilty this week to spying for Israel. Ronald Pelton was convicted of selling top secrets to Russia. They are just 2 of 27 individuals arrested for spying in the last 2.5 years. And high-profile court proceedings have brought intense scrutiny not just to the spies, but to the secrets they gave away.
A common thread which ties each of these spies together is the fact that the activity of each spy was known or suspected by persons close to him, perhaps a friend, family member, or co-worker. The damage caused by each spy could have been minimized if someone who had suspected wrongdoing had come forward to report questionable activity as it occurred while the spy was active. This briefing features a Department of Defense employee who witnessed a security violation and who reported the violation to security investigators. Investigation of the security violation led to the arrest of Jonathan J. Pollard for spying against the United States. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Naval Investigative Service acknowledged that Jonathan J. Pollard's espionage activity caused grave damage to the United States.
This case represents a serious, and I underscore serious, grave breach of national security secrets of this country.
It could have been worse. He might never have been caught. But an alert co-worker watched as Pollard committed a single security violation, and she then reported the matter to security. Many co-workers would have looked the other way. Some co-workers would have pretended they hadn't seen anything. Fortunately, this co-worker reported the security violation, and it led to the eventual arrest of a spy. We all owe her a debt of gratitude. The federal employee who is credited with having provided that initial tip on Jonathan Pollard's activity does not consider herself to be some kind of hero. She doesn't brag about her role in the investigation, and in fact, she insists upon remaining anonymous. Although she'll be represented by someone else, she's offered to share with us the thoughts and feelings that she had to deal with as she struggled to decide whether to report or to look the other way. She'll be referred to as Susan throughout this briefing. Jonathan J. Pollard was a civilian analyst employed by the Navy's Anti-Terrorist Alert Center, which is commonly referred to as the ATAC. In July 1984, Pollard became a spy for the Israeli intelligence service. For the next 18 months, Pollard sold thousands of classified documents to the Israelis, documents which the United States had not intended for release to Israel. The public perception is that Pollard was a Navy spy. In effect, Pollard was a spy who happened to work for the Navy, but who was used by the Israelis to penetrate DIA. The point is, Pollard was specifically tasked by the Israelis to obtain DIA material, not Navy material. The Pollard case amounted to a foreign intelligence penetration of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Jonathan Pollard and Susan worked together daily for about 17 months. Susan got along well with Pollard and never suspected him of espionage or of anything else of a suspicious nature.
I worked in the same building with Pollard and got to know him through occasional personal contacts during a period of about 17 to 18 months. We got along fine. We didn't socialize after work or anything, but we got along fine while at work. In fact, everyone got along well with Pollard. He was well liked. I don't know anyone who disliked him. We never had an argument or a disagreement or even a difference of opinion.
Susan did feel that Pollard occasionally told some tall tales, a reflection on his character. But the thought never occurred to Susan that Pollard was engaged in espionage.
Some of the stories Pollard used to tell were pretty far-fetched, like traveling throughout Europe on his honeymoon and spending a lot of money at expensive restaurants. And we just thought that he was stretching things a bit. Everyone knew that he was intensely interested in the Middle East, but that's not unusual for an anti-terrorist analyst. There was nothing that you could point to say, hey, I think this guy's a spy. It just wasn't like that.
This is DIA's reference library. It's a major resource for DIA analysts, as well as analysts from other military organizations in Washington, D.C. Jonathan Pollard was a frequent visitor here. He had access to virtually all classified collections. In fact, Pollard used this facility so extensively that more than 80% of the material he gave to the Israelis he took from here. Carrie Thompson, a supervisor in the library, remembers Jonathan Pollard.
He had a habit of wanting things at that time when he wanted whatever it was. He felt like he had the right to have it. He was, this particular incident happened when he was trying to carry an attaché case into another part of the library. And he was told that he could not carry the attaché case into that particular area. And he was very insistent on carrying this attaché case in. So it was brought to my attention because he was going to overlook that particular staff member's suggestion that he leave it at the front of the library.
What advice would you give to DIA employees in the event they encounter similar situations?
Report it, because it could be something big. Might seem small to you, but it could be something big.
At the end of a workday, one Friday afternoon during the summer of 1985, Susan watched as Jonathan Pollard left the ATAC building carrying a package of classified material. Pollard did have an authorized courier badge, which allowed him to transport classified material from one place to another. But Susan thought it unusual for Pollard to take classified material from the building at the end of a workday.
So what stimulated the suspicion that you had of him?
I really debated whether to say anything to anybody. I found myself making up excuses for Pollard. I thought, well, maybe he's just taking some stuff to somebody over at DIA or the Naval Intelligence Support Center, or he's just taking work home in order to catch up, or maybe he's just taking stuff home to impress his wife. But every time I'd make up an excuse, I'd turn around and play the devil's advocate, and I'd tell myself, hey, wait a minute, that can't be right, you know? I guess I was trying to talk myself out of saying anything to anybody. I didn't want to rat on anybody, so I made up excuses for him.
Susan felt compelled to report what she had seen. But she was troubled because Pollard's actions were not clearly a violation. Pollard's actions simply appeared to be suspicious. She merely described the incident without naming Pollard as the employee who had removed classified material from the building after hours. Once her supervisor agreed that the incident seemed suspicious, Susan then named Jonathan J. Pollard as the suspicious employee. It was not easy for Susan to report her concerns about Pollard. It was a tough decision. She struggled with the same inhibitions that any normal human being would struggle with.
So it was tough for you to make this decision. What was going on inside you at the time?
Well, I also worried about what my supervisor was going to say. I didn't know if he was just going to blow me off saying it was no big deal, or whether he'd go off the deep end and have a big argument with Pollard. I thought, oh, what if he shows up tomorrow and says, "Hey, Pollard, so-and-so said you did this and that," in front of everybody. The way I got around that was to tell my supervisor, "Hey, look, I don't know whether Pollard is doing anything terribly wrong, and I don't want to find myself in the middle of some big scene. But I'll just tell you what I know, and then you can decide for yourself what should be done about it. But please keep me out of it." I had enough faith in my supervisor to believe that if I asked him to be discreet, then he would be, and I wouldn't get caught in the middle of it.
It seems natural for the average American citizen to keep mere suspicions and concerns to himself. The attitude seems to be, if I see a crime committed in front of me, well, I'll report that. But I'm not going to tell anyone if I simply think that something funny is going on. We want DIA employees to report known security violations. We also want DIA employees to report their hunches and suspicions, just as Susan did in the Jonathan J. Pollard case.
But it really wasn't easy for you, was it?
I didn't want to get involved in a big investigation. I was a little worried that we would have investigators climbing all over the whole office, shouting matches, and that sort of thing. But it wasn't like that. The investigation was very professional, very discreet. They started out slowly, looking at our records to confirm that Pollard had been doing some unusual things and so on. And nobody knew that there was any kind of an investigation until Pollard was caught red-handed. Nobody in the ATAC, where Pollard worked, was interviewed until after he was picked up. I'm glad now that I reported.
It must be a great temptation for some people to use that information for their own purposes, and they will, unless other employees put a stop to it.
What advice would you give to other employees in similar situations?
My advice to other people is this. Call the Office of Security, and they'll take a quiet look at the situation. And if your concerns turn out to be no big deal, then fine. It's no big deal. At least you'll know that it's no big deal. On the other hand, if it turns out to be a major concern, then you'll sleep a lot better at night knowing that you did the right thing.
If you find yourself debating whether to report a security concern, well, then you should report it. The Office of Security will take a discreet look at the situation, and it's only the Pollards of this world who will get hurt.
This was a special message from DIA's Office of Security.